Hello everyone, today we're having a look at Hungry Monkey. This little card game plays with 2 to 6 players in around 15 minutes. It's going to be a little bit on the shorter side if it's at 2, and maybe a tad over that if it's at 6, but that's a pretty good ballpark. Let's roughly work out how the game plays, then I'll give you my thoughts. And just know that this was provided to me by the publisher for the review, just the game, nothing more. So, Hungry Monkey is a game where you've basically got 4 mystery cards placed face down on the table in front of you. Each player does, and then you've got a hand of cards. That hand of cards at the start of the game might not seem important, but it certainly can be. You are effectively trying to, in the sort of start early part of the game, trying to work out and maybe swap what the 4 cards on the table are in front of you. Then, at the end game, you're hopefully playing those, getting out and being the first one to play all of your cards. So, how does it actually work on a turn? Well, first of all, you're going to play 1 or more cards into the middle. It can be the same number or higher than the previously played card. Now, there's a couple of caveats that goes into this, but effectively, if you've, say, got 2 2s, you can play both of them into the middle. Now, if 4 of the same number have ever been played in a row, the pile in the middle is fully discarded out of the game, and then the game carries on with you starting it off. If that doesn't happen, that gang of 4 as it is referred to, if that doesn't happen, you're going to trigger the ability of the cards played. If there is one, not every card has an ability. That's maybe going to allow you to have a look at one of the cards in front of you, or any of the face down ones on the table. Maybe swap something from your hand with one of those, so you could maybe put a card that you think is good down on the table and bring one of those up into your hand. Maybe it's meaning the next player has to play an 8 or lower rather than higher each time. Maybe it just removed the pile in the middle completely. There are a range of abilities, but that's pretty much most of them. There are a few others, including a tiny ant, which means you pick up all of the cards underneath it. So that might sound bad, but we'll come on to why it might be good later on. And there's a few like that, the cheeky monkey being probably the best, as it can be anything because it copies the card below it. So you're playing these cards at the beginning and then drawing up to 3. At some point in the deck, you'll have put in this card that basically ends the draw deck phase, and that's based on player count, how far through that goes. When that kitten is revealed in the deck, you can no longer draw up to 3, and that's kind of good, because at that point it is the end game. You are simply trying to now get rid of your cards and then play your face down ones, because that's the only time you can play your face down cards, when you have nothing in your hand. So that's not going to happen at the start of the game, because you're always drawing up to 3 cards. There is one other thing. If you can't go, you can risk it and sort of flip one over from the top of the deck until, again, that cat has sort of sat on top of the deck, meaning that deck phase is over. And, well, that's pretty much it. You're trying to play the cards higher and trying to get out. If you can't, you pick up the pile of cards, hopefully not too many, and they go into your hand. And again, you have to play the cards from your hand before you get to play the cards on the table, which is what you're really trying to do. So yes, you can play many of the same number. That might burn the pile and sort of discard it out of the game and different things like that. But yeah, play cards from your hand going either the same number or higher, trigger abilities, and try and get rid of your cards. It's that simple. First of all, there are a number of abilities. Now, not every card has one, like for instance, between 4 and 6, none of those cards have abilities, and some of the others don't either. But there's a good amount, but even after your first play, you'll have seen definitely all of the abilities, and you'll know what they are from just sort of general play. There'll be no more, oh, what does this card do? They've all got a little symbol on them, sort of. For instance, the swap one has an arrow up and an arrow down in the top corner, so you know when you play the 2, that's the swap a card from your hand with one in front of you. They're all very intuitive in terms of what they are, what those powers are. The first game, yeah, it might be, oh, let's just keep the back of the rule book there, which is nicely listing all of the card abilities, but certainly partway into that first game, you won't be needing to double check. And that's why it works as a really quick game, even with all those different sorts of abilities. Now, some people will love and some people won't love that build-up phase. That sort of, you can draw up from the deck, so at the end of your turn you're drawing up to 3 cards. Sort of the deck drawing phase and then the end game. Some people may not like that first phase because it can feel a little bit like, well, this is a bit pointless. I'm playing these cards, but it's not. It's all about trying to determine what these cards underneath, in front of you, face down are. And if you can work that out or even swap in some better ones that you know you can play, like if you've got an 11 in your hand, if you can swap it with one of those other cards, you know you can definitely play that. It will be higher than what's on the top of the pile, so you won't have to pick those cards up. So it's a preparation phase and then an end game. Now you can get a bit screwed over by the cards, you know, you could be lucky and get some good cards in this game, but you do have that prep phase that lasts a good amount of time. It's probably, if we're saying the whole game is 15 minutes on average, your first 10 minutes is probably that prep phase, and then 5 minutes maybe that end game. And yeah, that's going to fluctuate a little bit with player count, but that's the sort of logic of, at the start you are trying to determine what they are, swap them out, and not maybe have this sort of huge hand of cards. But you have that huge hand of cards, well, you're playing multiple cards of the same number on a turn, so your hand shrinks quite quickly, and also you've got maybe all of those abilities that are going to help you. So if you take that early on, that hit early on almost of getting a lot of cards, it can be actually really beneficial because all of a sudden you've got all of these abilities and you can try and sting someone else at the worst time with a really high number. So when it comes to it, oh, we can't draw from the deck anymore, now you're picking up. And that's a really, I was like, no, I've got all these cards that I don't want right at this time when I'm trying to play the stuff from the table. So there's a balance between the prep and the not. But I do think some people might not enjoy that prep if it goes against them sort of card draw wise. If you've played a few games of this, you'll notice that it's for building, you know, the 4 cards in front of you up in terms of making sure you know what they are, or at least some of them are. But that first game, if you're not really thinking about it, can be like, what was the point of all of this? But once you've played a game or two, that does become very self-obvious that it's prepping for the end game. If you're like me and probably going to play just a few rounds of this, and you're probably going to want to play them as individual games, there's 22 cards in this box that won't be for you. There are bean cards included in the box, and these are allowing you to score over sort of a number of games. And it kind of makes one part of the game a little bit better in terms of, normally it's the first person to get rid of all their cards. So if you've got 6 people around the table, there's 1 winner. And it kind of doesn't really matter who comes second or whatever, but you can carry on playing. Now, if you're doing multiple games together and using the bean cards to sort of count up points, it really does matter who comes first, second, third, fourth, etc. Because that's determining how many of those bean cards you're going to get to draw. The slight downside is that the 2 and 3 bean cards are shuffled together, so you could win and pull off 4 beans and put them in your sort of secret stash, and then the next person can draw and get 3 just from 1 card. And there's a bit of luck there, but it's a short, fun game. We've actually enjoyed more just playing sort of 2 games of it back to back rather than 2 games scoring both of them together with those bean cards. But it certainly does allow you the option than having to get a pen and pencil and sort of note down some scores or whatever. So it's a nice way to maybe link games, but I think most people will probably just sort of count up like, oh, you've won, okay, maybe we'll do second place or whatever, and then we'll shuffle all the cards back up and just go again. And not use the beans, but it's there if you want it. So overall, it's a very sort of fast-paced card game, a number of triggering abilities, not too hard to remember abilities, so halfway through a game, you're not going to be checking the rules at all to work out what does that card do again. It's got that nice sort of logic of, if I take this big pile of cards at the start, that might not be too bad for me. It might not kill my game off, but at the end, you really don't want to have to take that pile in the middle. There's cheers, there's boos, just as someone plays a card before you and you're like, oh, I don't think I can beat that, and then you flip your card over that was face down. You didn't know what it was, and it's higher. Yes, you get that big rush. Sometimes you get that, it's lower, I'm having to pick all these up. You get those highs, you get those lows in a very short amount of fun time. That is Hungry Monkey. Definitely recommend it. It's staying on the shelf. Well, it's not going to be staying on the shelf because we're going to be getting it to the table over and over again, but it will live on the shelf at least. Hopefully that's allowed you to work out if it's for you or not. I've tried to sort of give some balance there of why you might say like the bean cards a little bit more than I do. I don't really use them, but certainly other people will. And let me know what you think of the game in the comments section below. Until next time, check out other news, reviews and all that sort of jazz on the channel, including a review for Sweet and Spicy, which came out recently. Until next time though, have a great day gaming.